All right, what's going on, y'all? Okay, today I have this cool drawing that I made of pretty much like a black version of Kid Goku, and it's basically like a representation of me. It's artwork that goes hand in hand with some beat projects that I'm working on. So, what I want to do today is show you guys how to slightly animate this artwork that I made, and I'm not even exactly 100% sure on how I want to do it. I just kind of vaguely know that I want to emulate that this is sort of floating through the sky and that there's a little bit of rain going on. And I'm just going to use a couple simple techniques with keyframing and After Effects and maybe like a couple expressions. But first I wanted to bring it into Photoshop and to organize everything the way I'd like to organize it. That way when I'm in After Effects, I don't have a bunch of different layers and I don't know what they are, and then I won't have a bunch of like different pre-comps that are like all confusing and stuff like that. So this is my one of my cloud layers. This is another shadow. Okay, all of this could be placed into the same. Just try to make sure I grab everything. Everything except this, I think. And this. I'm trying to, in my head, plot out exactly how I'm gonna have this animation move about. So I think I want to merge this. But before I do that, whoops. What's this right here? Oh, because that. Okay, we'll just get rid of this layer altogether. Great. No, that's happening. Why is that happening? There we go. Okay, cool. So there's my Goku layer / me. And here's just like the details for the cloud. And then underneath this, the cloud and the shadow. Merge those together. And this behind is like a glow that I may or may not keep. I don't know. This is backup layer, so I'll delete that. Don't need that any longer. And I'm just trying to make everything as simple as possible on here. That way, when I go to animate, like I said, it's not a bunch of layers around everywhere. And I'm not doing all of this eye clicking to see what everything is, like I'm doing right now. So this will just make things easier once we go to make things move. Now, I wanted to duplicate. This is right here. Just shadows. Perfect. Oh, that's like a texture. I don't want to use that. Okay, so what I wanted to do was duplicate this. That way I want to make a frame where he's like blinking. So I'm just going into here with the pen tool and closing out his eyes. I'm gonna get rid of his eyes. And lucky for me, I drew it in such a way where I could just like brown it out. I'm doing is just filling this. Paint bucket. Then I'm gonna do the same over here. Trying to just closely cut out as neatly as I can. And on this side I have a little bit of a gradient thing going on, so I gotta be extra careful. Invert that. There we go. And I still got like this sort of a harsh line thing going on. So just to hide that, I'm gonna take a soft brush. And just the best way I can, just sort of kind of blend that away. So maybe smudge it a little bit. Oh, you know what? I don't know why I didn't think of that before. I'll merge that down. I can just smudge. Smudge, blur it. Trial and error, folks. Bear with me. There we go. Okay. So that's blended in pretty decently. Now what I want to do is just sort of like create like sort of some lines as if he's blinking. Stroke path. Click mask here. Whoops. Sorry, I click shape and then it'll give you a shape layer. Everything's acting so weird to me right now. Try this again. All right, with the pen tool, I'm gonna make a shape layer, and then I'm gonna make sure there's no fill and there's only a stroke. And then I'm just gonna create an eye. Maybe a little bit thicker. Just like a, oh, he's blinking frame. So this frame will be like a brief frame that we show. We're gonna tell After Effects to show it every so often, just to make it look like he's blinking. So we'll even name this blink layer. Okay. All right, so I got everything pretty much layered out how I would like. So now I'm going to save this PSD as go flying, whatever. Now I'm going to take this PSD into After Effects. And honestly, you could, to an extent, you could animate this in Photoshop, but it's just much smoother to do in After Effects, so that's what we're gonna shoot for here. So do a new project, new composition, name it I want to name it Cloud Kid. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to provide you guys with this PSD for reference because this is for a project that I'm using to promote myself, so I kind of don't want the layers floating around there, so sorry about that. But you could take the same concept and apply some of the elements that I use to animate to some of your own projects. So tutorial's still worth taking a look at. Okay, let's see. Now we're gonna import it and just as a composition and retain the layer sizes. Make sure there's editable layer styles. If you have layer styles, you'd want to keep that as it is. If not, you want to just merge the styles on the footage. It just depends on if you want to edit the layer styles, which are like the drop shadow, the inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, those type of effects. So hit OK and it imports it into here. And it's already going to give you a composition. And it's already going to give you a composition based on whatever size your PSD was. Mine was 6,000 by 6,000 pieces, which is way bigger than I would like it to be. But that's cool because I know my layers are going to be nice and sharp. So what I'm going to do right now is try to resize the composition in a way where it's a comfortable size. And I just have to like sort of just scale down everything. All right. So at the end, I'm gonna just go ahead and change my composition to scale it down to a more appropriate size. But right now, what I'm gonna do is go ahead and go into my animating. Okay, so first I want to make sure it's just one view. So I want to make sure it's just one view, and we're gonna give the illusion that, first of all, let's deal with the blinking. We're gonna give the illusion that he's blinking, which is really just two layers, on and off. So this layer here, so with this layer here, we're gonna go into the blink. We're gonna hit T for our opacity. And what we wanna do is hold the Alt key and click on the stopwatch, and it's gonna bring up our expressions. And in our expressions, what we want to do now is add a loop out expression. Now all we want to do is make sure that our blink has like maybe 1 or 2 frames on and then off. So the first thing we want to do is get this guy to start blinking. So it's going to involve us adding an expression to the opacity. What we want to basically tell the opacity to do is go from 0 to 100 in relatively 1 or 2 frames so that we don't see that transitional fade. So the first thing we're going to do is hit T to open up your opacity on the blink layer, and then we're going to click the stopwatch, and then we're going to go zoom in and go over maybe like 1 frame, hit the stopwatch again, another frame, and then this time this frame is going to be on 0. And that's how you get the eyes to open. Okay, so we want to get this guy to blink. So first thing we want to do is take our blinking layer and set it to 0 because we want his eyes open most of the time. Next thing we want to do is open up the opacity. Okay, first thing we want to do to make this guy blink, hit the T key on the blink layer to open up the opacity box. Then you want to make sure that it's set to 0 as opposed to 100. If it's on 100, he's going to be having his eyes open most of the time, but we want his eyes to be, or he's going to have his eyes closed most of the time if it's on 100. So we want it to be on 0. That way it's only going to flash with his eyes closed for like a couple frames. So the next thing we want to do is make sure that your playhead's at the beginning. Click on the stopwatch. Let's say his eyes are open for maybe like 1 second, which is 24 frames. Now we're going to hit this opacity keyframe button one more time. We're just telling the computer to make sure that this is closed at 0% for all of this time. And then once we get to this frame here, we're going to boost it all the way up to 100. So now it's telling from this frame to this frame, we're going from 0 opacity to 100. Now, I don't know. It just depends on how you want it to look. Maybe let's make a blink for 2 frames. And then we hit the keyframe again. And then go over a frame. And then back to 0. So let's zoom out. And then let's loop this and see how it's going to look. Okay. In my opinion, the blink is lasting too long. So I'm going to bring it in 1 more frame. And that's basically how you get them to blink. It's really that simple. So let's say like I want this to be more than 2 seconds and I don't want to keep adding keyframes into here. So now what we can do is hold the Alt key and then click again on the stopwatch or the opacity, and then we go into our layers, or I'm sorry, our property, and then go to loop out. So what it's basically telling the computer to do is just keep looping this layer. So every second he's gonna blink. Now, if you don't want it to be so like computerized, you want it to be a little more randomized by how he blinks, just set your keyframes to however you'd like to do it. Maybe you want him to blink twice in one thing. Maybe you want 2 blinks. Like maybe you want the blinks to not be every second, so you just have to sort of just figure out how you want it to be and how you want it to occur naturally or whatever the case. So now he's just gonna blink indefinitely. Now the next thing I want to do now is, I'm sorry for if you can hear the loud noise, they're doing the mowing outside, but the next thing I want to do is go ahead and parent this link to the link below it. That way, if ever I move this Goku layer below it, the top layer will move with it. Because now what I'm going to do is get this cloud to start moving. So the next thing I want to do also is parent the Goku layer to the cloud layer. And then finally parent the cloud details to the cloud layer. So pretty much everything is paired to the cloud layer at the bottom. Now my next thing I'm going to do is go to the cloud layer, and then I'm going to hit the P to open up my positioning. And then I'm going to hit hold the Alt key and then click on the stopwatch again. And now I want to do a wiggle expression. And then with this wiggle expression, I'm going to probably have to play around with the settings, but I think I want it to move around like once every second, and then maybe like only move about 30 pixels or so. So basically what this is telling the machine to do is just wiggle about in a little area at this speed at 1. So let's see how this looks. Let's turn my resolution down so we can see what's going on here a little faster. So you can see that's not really moving like that much. So let's bump it up to like maybe, I think 100 might be overdoing it, but let's see. Actually 100 is not bad. Okay, so 100 pixels and then maybe 2 instead of 1. So it moves a little quicker. Cool. So now there's a couple things we could do for this rain layer. I'm probably just gonna go ahead and like add an overlay of rain happening just to give it that effect. But the next thing I want to work on is the background. Now the background, I'm gonna need to scale it up a bit. And then what I'm also gonna want to do is move the background maybe over this way or something like that, all the way to the edge. And then I'm gonna press P to open up the position. Then I'm gonna hit the keyframe, and I want to move the background over this period of time. We're gonna have the background travel in a direction to make it seem like he's, moving. So I think maybe that might be backwards. I don't know. But let's hit play and see what happens. So it looks like he's like descending backwards. So what I'm gonna do is highlight these keyframes, right click, go to my keyframe assistant, and then time reverse the keyframes and see if that makes it look a little bit more. So now we're getting that feeling of movement going on here. So what I had did was I found Adobe texture of rain that I could use that I got from YouTube, so I'm gonna use that. But I pretty much got the gist of how I want to animate it right now. So the next thing I'm gonna do is bring it into a more appropriate size which is this 1500 by 1500. I'm just gonna drag my composition that I worked on into here and then scale it all down together. And then the next thing I want to do is bring in my rain texture. And I want to scale this up so that it fits the canvas. And then I want to set it to screen. That way we get rid of all that black. And then I want to rotate it a bit so that way it kind of further sort of gives the illusion of him traveling in a certain direction. And I'll even duplicate it so that we can see the rain a lot more clearly. And then you can also add, like, let's say I want to give like a lightning effect. Get us a white solid in here. Set the opacity to 0, and then like a similar thing with the blink. So opacity 0, and then suddenly we add another keyframe. Go over maybe 1 or 2 keyframes, bring it to 100, 1 or 2 keyframes over again, bring it down to 0. Maybe like and then of course go back into our looping property, loop it out. In under an hour, this is pretty dope. Especially once you add the music, and you know, maybe you can like sort of let's see, I can even play with this even further with the positioning. Whoops. Wiggle that, maybe 230. Let's see what that looks like. And then we can also, let's play with the scale a little bit, like so that it's like slowly sort of zooming into them. Let's even like, maybe we could even do some sort of motion blur. Let's see. Directional blur. And sort of this direction, I think. And then turn it up. Maybe turn the opacity down a bit. And then maybe we can alt click on this and get this parameter to do a wiggle. Maybe it works, maybe it won't. I'm just experimenting at this point. Let's say 230 again, and let's see how this looks. Maybe turn this up to like 10, 50. and that adds a cool like sort of blur effect to it also. Ooh. I also have like a rain on window effect if you want to just keep trying to further sort of sell the, like maybe here, let's add an adjustment layer. Put another vignette on here. Oh, that's dope. And then one last touch. I also drew some puffy clouds a little while back. So I'm gonna import this into here. I'm gonna scale it up, bring it down here. Let's actually blur it a little bit. You can go for the lens blur if you've got a fast computer, or you could just go for the Gaussian blur if your computer lags a little. Sometimes the lens blur kind of ties the computer up a little bit, at least for me. Let's rotate it a little bit. Now, what I'm gonna do is scale this up and then just move it out of the frame, hit the P to bring out the position, and then like maybe every few seconds or so, I want this to pass by like that. And then, of course, we're gonna loop that. Let's see, spread that out a little more. It just adds a little bit more realism to what's going on. So we'll do that, duplicate it. Actually, let's bring one into the original composition. That way I can have one float past him. So let's see how that looks. Bam, and there you got your animation. So from here, you could add like some thunder sounds, some rainstorm sounds, or like, you know, your favorite, whatever your favorite song might be underneath it. And that's exactly what I'm gonna use it for. I'm just gonna use it to promote my music and stuff like that. So I hope you guys liked the tutorial. Thanks for watching. Peace.